Venkat. How are
Hi,
you?
hi, Arpita. I'm good. I'm good.
Thank you so much for making time for this initiative.
Yeah, I've seen quite an interesting one, a different one, a personal take. So I said, yeah, let me sign up.
Yeah, I mean, this whole, idea came to me because I'm seeing a lot of anxious people out there right now who are trying to figure out a way to deal with either their professional challenge or the personal challenge during this COVID-19 situation. So I thought of you as the best person to talk about how to overcome the personal challenge. Every day people are sitting idle at home, many of them. So let me start by asking you, what is your take on boredom, so to speak? How people who are sitting idle at home, and what is your take on that?
Actually, before we started working from home, we were wondering how we would, deal with it. But it has turned out to be quite a busy thing from home as well. But I would certainly advise, or suggest at least, if people can, use this time to figure out one or two things that they need to do, they would love to do outside work. I think it'll be a very, very useful thing because I'm sure each one of us has got some interest, some talent, which we felt that we didn't have the time to invest in, but now there is a time for reflection. So you can think about it, decide five things, then narrow it down to two, and then start working on it, including learning to be by yourself, learning to be bored, learning not needing to pick up something, even a book, you know.
In fact, just to elaborate on that, I know that you as a person has a lot of interest outside work, right? And when I was in Titan, I remember you were famous for cycling to work. And I also know you as a marathon runner. So you have a lot of interest outside work. So that work-life balance, as we call it, do you think that really helps cope with a situation like this where we are in confinement?
Certainly, except that I created a term for it for myself. I call it work-life integration uh, because to me, work is a very integral part of life, and therefore, a work-life balance seems to suggest that life is everything outside work. For instance, when I'm on holiday, let's say in the water on the beach, I'm enjoying the water, but half an hour later, I'm relaxing on the deck chair. Then I pick up my mobile and then see what mails have come. I answer the mails. And 10 minutes later, I'm back in the water and enjoying the holiday. And half an hour later, I again back on the deck chair, maybe or at lunch or after lunch and answering mails. So to me, it's not work-life balance, but work-life integration. And I've practiced this, and it works for me. So it's not like work is something just for earning money, and then I have to enjoy life with that money. No, work is very much part of enjoyment.
But there are people who would say that it actually creates a lot of stress, and it becomes less of a holiday and more of a stress. So work stress, what is your view on work stress, and how should we really relook at it at a time like this, according to you?
Stress is a very interesting subject, and I've thought a lot about it. And I've also learned to distinguish pressure from stress. Okay. Now, in our industry, there's a inspiring statement: "No pressure, no diamonds." Just like diamonds are created out of intense pressure over millions of years, excellence or the route to perfection has got a lot of pressure sitting as part of it. Pressure brings the best in us. For example, if we were to take the current situation of what's going to happen after normalcy returns, there is so much of innovation going on. I know, for example, within my company, because of the intense pressure that this situation has brought, people are stretching their imagination, stretching their capabilities because of the pressure. But what is the distinction between pressure and stress? Pressure is when you are imagining all these new ideas, when you're stretching your capabilities to find solutions to overcome the challenge. That is pressure. Stress is when you're already reached the end of the road and you've concluded that the worst is going to happen and you're really worried sick about that and constantly getting worked up about the consequence of what is going to happen. as opposed to focusing your mind on what you should be doing to succeed.
Is the core issue of the way we work, right? People are constantly thinking of the consequence and hence making themselves unhappy. I also believe that this leads to lack of creativity because you are always trying to avoid the blame, isn't it?
Yeah. You're worrying about the failure as
Yeah.
opposed to working on how to succeed. And one of the things I would suggest, in relation to this, because stress is a big contributor to health also. It's not just the, you know, mind. And one of the things that you can do to dramatically reduce stress is certainly cultivate one or at least two big things which are outside your main job. Right? It could be cooking, it could be singing, it could be workout and running. It could simply also be to be the best husband in the world or to be the best daughter in the world. And the last thing all it takes is a huge load of empathy and a lot of hard work. So it doesn't require any innate talent that maybe something like some other hobby may need. So I think when you take up one or two things outside your job and devote good quality time to that, it does two things. One is it reduces the time that you're spending thinking about your job, and to that extent naturally reduces whatever potential there is for stress. The second is the activity that you're engaged in, the positive impact of that, whether it is adrenaline, dopamine, that effect aggravates, or not aggravates, sorry, accelerates the reduction in the stress level on that 70%, which may be your job. And therefore, in a way, maybe brings down that stress, if I were to just use a mathematical thing on it, at least by half. And therefore your ability to deal with, and the stress starts becoming closer and closer to what I call pressure, which is a positive thing in my mind. And therefore your head is much clearer, it is more tranquil, and it's in a position to actually deal with the challenge which you have, as opposed to worry about the consequences of failing to deal with the challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I think that coming from you as the MD of Titan Company, this coming from you is pretty incredible because not too many bosses say these things that, have interests outside of work. All they expect, most bosses expect you to be working 24/7. So this is really truly amazing that someone at your level is saying these things and you believe that but the work-life integration, like you said, actually increases productivity at the end of the day, right?
Because finally, we want people not just to put in time. We need people to create, imaginative things, smart solutions to overcome the very complex problems that we have around us today. For that, it doesn't mean it is 24/7. It means a clear mind. It means a cool mind. It means a happy mind. It means a positive attitude. Those are the things which will deliver that solution which is smart or imaginative.
Yeah, that's very well put. I mean, I think what happens is people, tend to think that you're not taking your work seriously when you are taking holidays or when you are taking a break or have interests or passions outside of work. They equate it with lack of
This
seriousness.
this point, the phrase that you use, taking work seriously, reminds me of, you may yourself, you would certainly know about, the sense of humor that the folks at Titan have. And, we used to say in the Titan Management Council meetings that if someone was a fly on the wall, that person, wouldn't be blamed, can't be blamed for thinking, I mean, how do these guys, run this company reasonably well like this? Because all the time they're cracking up, they're joking something, they're just not at all appearing to be serious. And we
Yeah.
used to define, our philosophy as or approach as, we don't take ourselves too seriously, but we take our work very, very seriously. And what does that mean? Sense of humor is one part of it, but not taking ourselves too seriously, it's another way of saying, we don't actually have egos. We don't think we are the big people, and everything else, sort of runs to our command, and our imprint on this whole business is the highest and the biggest, and almost to the exclusion of a lot of people in the organization. No, it's a huge, huge team effort which finally delivers the result. And therefore, if you think too much of yourself just because of something that's printed on your card, you're wholly mistaken, and that's clearly a way, to at least a potentially unsustainable success year after year.
No, I mean, I
Therefore,
can't agree with that more. Like you guys, everybody, when I was in Titan, I remember the entire top management had such an amazing sense of humor, and that just eases the whole situation, right? Even in a situation like this, coronavirus, that a pandemic that everyone's faced with, I'm sure the entire team at Titan knows that the top management is not going to add to that worry. They're only going to try and ease the situation, probably with a joke.
I'll tell you a story on this, an incident. Somewhere in the mid 90s, we had this sub brand called Insignia, and we had made a film to launch Insignia, and that film had turned out such a terrible film, the worst film that I was ever part of making in my life. Okay, and I was so ashamed of it, but it was so late, we couldn't do anything about it. And in the launch, we ended up using that film. And I knew at that time that Mr. Desai was terribly disappointed with the whole thing and sad about it, but the gentleman that he was, he didn't tell me anything. And many years later, about 5-6 years later, in a conversation, I spoke about that Insignia film to him. I don't remember the background, but I remember him mentioning it, and he couldn't recollect. Then I told him, Mr. Desai, you remember that film for which you nearly sacked me? And he smiles at me and says, I can still do it, Venkat, that is the, sense of humor.
No, and even for you to take that in your stride, I think it works both ways, right?
It was because he meant it as a joke. He was not planning to sack me. I knew he was not planning to sack me. But that's what makes workplace more interesting. Enjoying, working together. So
Yeah.
that's what.
Yeah, absolutely. But I can't help but notice that there are birds around your house. I can hear the birds, and that makes me extremely jealous because in this entire lockdown, I can't complain about anything because there are so many people worse off. But the only thing I'm missing is nature, is jungle. I'm stuck in this apartment, so it's not easy. It's great to see nature around you, and I think that's one of the takeaways in this lockdown, isn't it? We are starting to appreciate nature more.
Very much, very much. And you are, seeing birds. Only thing is, from a personal point of view, we all became vegans in the family in 2015. And one of the things that ended up happening somehow after becoming vegan is a deeper observation as well as appreciation of animals.
So, Venkat, just to wrap this up, what would you like to leave us with? Maybe a few lines from you as a shairi or a song. That would be great. Please.
It's important to stay rooted and maybe even a little philosophical in times of intense, challenge like this and chaos like this. So there are many songs which are relevant today, and I'll just sing a couple of bars from one. ये न सोचो इसमें अपनी हार है कि जीत है, ये न सोचो इसमें अपनी हार है कि जीत है, इसे अपना लो जो भी जीवन की रीत है, ये जिद छोड़ो यूं ना तोड़ो, हर पल एक दर्पण है, ये जीवन है, इस जीवन का यही है, यही है, यही है रंग जो थोड़े गम है, थोड़ी खुशियाँ थोड़े गम हैं, थोड़ी खुशियाँ यही है, यही है, यही है छाँव धूप, ये जीवन है.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much. Please stay safe.
My pleasure. Thanks, Arpita. All the best to you.
Thank you.